Hey guys, today I will interview DJ and producer Ben Rau. You will learn what helped him to become the pro producer that he is today and how he releases his own music so that you can adapt his knowledge and experience to your own process. Besides producing and playing gigs around the globe, he is running 2 record labels. On Inkal, Ben releases his own music, and on Meta, he is featuring new upcoming talents. Multiple of these releases were #1 hits on platforms like DJ.de or Beatport. I met Ben around 7 years ago, and since then we have been sharing experiences about music, about production, about life, and I learned a lot from him about how to become and how to be a professional music producer. I've always loved his attitude of testing new things, of seeing what works for him, and of successfully implementing it to his own strategy. Hey guys, I'm sitting here with Ben Rau in his studio in Berlin, and today we will talk a little bit about the way how you build up your label and how you put your music out there.
Okay.
And in the last years you actually started 2 labels.
2 years ago.
3 years ago.
2 years ago I started 2 labels. Yeah.
Two labels.
Yeah.
And you self-released most of your music. Why did you do that? Why did you choose this way?
I realized, like many people that send out music, that getting music signed is very hard. Can be a very frustrating process, and you can send out a lot of music and not get answers, but that actually wasn't the reason. The reason was I had released a couple of EPs on other people's labels, and what had happened was we had some severe delays, basically, as an artist, it's very important to have releases in regular intervals.
Yeah.
And if somebody delays an EP, that puts your career on hold for that kind of stage of time, because you need regular releases to be touring and to be gigging. At that time I wasn't touring that much, but I just had this bad experience with this label, which just delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed. And I actually talked to a fellow coach of yours, Mike Monday, who was coaching me at the time. And Mike Monday was saying to me, well, what does that tell you? And I'm like, I don't know. And he said, well, it's time to start your own thing, and not depend on anybody else when you want to release your music. And I believed the music that I had was good, and that's why I went for it. And the rest is history.
Awesome. And when you say it's important to release music in a kind of steady schedule, or
regular intervals,
regular intervals, what is this interval for you? Or is there like a perfect interval?
Well, the perfect interval I think would probably be like every 3 months at least, so like an EP every 3 months, which basically means 4 EPs a year, and then a couple of remixes on top of that. That should really make a big impact, depending on that your music resonates with people and they like it. But if you have music that is successful and it resonates and you can release 4 times a year, then your career will definitely progress from that. Anything less than that is kind of maintenance level, where you can keep things at the level where you are. But if you really want to break through, you need like a big push, an initial push, to really get into people's heads. And I would say like 4 or more EPs in 1 year is needed to have that first impact, basically.
And is there like a number of EPs that's like maybe too much per year, or would you say?
I would say monthly would be too much, basically. But then I don't know anybody that can make 12 EPs in a year. If you think you've got to make 2 tracks per EP, that's 24 tracks a year. If it was 12 EPs, that's 1 every 2 weeks. So I don't know how quickly people work, but 2 weeks to make a track is a short amount of time. Usually they take longer. Testing on the road, going back in the studio, tweaking. So there's some people that can make like a track a day, But usually I think their music also sounds like they're making a track a day. It's usually basic. It's usually percussion based. It usually lacks depth. So there's people that pride themselves on being very quick, but in my experience, these people always, the music sounds like they made it quickly, you know? Yeah.
Okay. So, and in my perception, today or nowadays, it's way easier to produce music because the tools are more accessible.
Yeah.
And it's easier to release music because you don't have to print vinyl. You can just kind of almost directly upload it to Spotify and all the platforms. But it's more difficult to get heard or to cut through this noise floor.
Yeah.
And you obviously managed or were able to do this, cutting through this noise floor.
Yes, yeah.
And if you imagine that somebody says, okay, I really like this idea of doing my own thing and to be in full control of the release schedule, and I want to start an own label, and is maybe asking himself, how could I cut through this noise floor? How can I get more reach, more attention? Do you have any maybe advice for this?
It's difficult.
From your experience.
Yeah, it's difficult. I would say to cut through the noise, you have to make very good music, and to make very good music takes time. Some talent is not necessarily the biggest factor, but some talent is needed, and just working really hard every day on getting better. To become a good producer is hard, and to make music on a high level consistently is also hard. And the people that are usually really good at it put in a lot of hours, and that's why they're good. So to cut through, as I would say, first you have to dedicate everything that you do to that goal. So I would say cut out everything that's going to stop you from making music. So that means, don't go out and party too much at the weekends, because you want to be in the studio on Monday morning fresh with fresh ideas. Make sure that you get in a couple of hours every day, so you can get better. If you can work a part-time job and live at home until you got the first couple of releases out, do that, because you can go downstairs and help yourself to mum's fridge rather than having to earn the rent and put food on the table for yourself. So if that's an option for you, for people who are already kind of my age, or a little bit younger, and they're already living professional lives and have flats to support, you have to maybe move to a place where there's less financial pressures. I know a lot of people, for example, in places like London are struggling because you spend so much time earning the money to survive and to live that there's not much room left for creativity. So this is why Berlin has become a real haven for people like you and me. Because we're sitting in the studio here, and the studio costs like $500 a month, not 1,500 like in London. So I would say reduce all your pressures, put in as much time as possible, and just practice and persistence, and that's how you get good, and that's how you cut through the noise.
So you really focus on the quality of your craft, on
yes.
the quality of your music.
Yeah, that's absolutely number one. And to just make it special, to just if you have a good idea, it's like, how can you add something extra, how can you use sounds that nobody's used before, in the beginning, I used to spend a lot of time, trawling through sample banks, trying to find the right sounds, and I just realized that it kills the vibe and it's no fun. So now I make my own sounds. That's how you cut through the noise, when you have a sound, I use the same synth every time for my bass line. I use the same synths, the Roland V-synths for my stabs and for my pads. And you start to get a signature sound, and that's how you cut through the noise. When people can tell it's your track without knowing that it's your track, and they come up to you and ask you, is that one of yours? That's when you succeeded cutting through, because you've become recognizable.
Okay, awesome. So you kind of limit yourself in the tools that you are using.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really master these tools,
Yeah.
and then people know, okay, these tools and this combination of tools
Yeah.
is like his sound.
Yeah, I always use the same ones, you know.
Okay,
And like
interesting.
it's like same synth for the bass line, same synth for the pads, you know. Like I love my 303. I use a plugin for that though because it's easier to program.
Yeah.
And I do incorporate new sounds every now and then, and I try to achieve the sort of same results with different machines. So like one thing that my tracks are known for are like glitchy sounds and weird sort of almost sort of modular sounding percussion.
Yeah.
And like I have my go-to machines here, which is the Electribe SX.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the SX, which is the sample one, the red one. But this machine can also do weird, you know, kind of weirdly pitched percussion sounds because it's a filter.
Yeah,
so
it's a Vermona retroverb.
Vermona retroverb blend. It's not a reverb. It's called the retroverb. It's actually a filter, but it has a spring reverb in it. That's why it's called the retroverb. But it's actually a filter with an LFO, and you know, so you can just send percussion through there. So these are kind of my signature sounds. This one here, it's a really cool machine as well. It's Synstrom Deluge.
Yeah.
From New Zealand, a really amazing little groove box,
cool.
Which is really incredible. Yeah. So yeah, signature instruments that you keep using again and again.
Yeah.
Get a signature sound that makes you stand out as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that because I think there are so many producers out there who constantly buy new synthesizers and new gear and probably could make so much more music in this time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it always takes time to learn a machine, or to put it on eBay, or get it from eBay, or repair it.
And that's a form of resistance, I would say. Like, and when I use the term resistance, I mean like inner barriers that you come up against, inner obstacles within yourself. And a form of resistance is definitely you know, thinking, well, if I have this instrument, then I can make the track that I want to make. You know, well, you can make the track that you want to make right now, or something different with what you have. So what you have is not really that important. It's more important that what you know how to use what you have really well.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree on that. And when you say like inner obstacles or resistance, can you tell me a little bit more about how you experienced this in your producing career and how you like overcame these obstacles, or if you have like a strategy that works for a lot of these obstacles?
So I mean, resistance is probably like finding out about what resistance is probably one of the most important things that you can do in your life. There is a book that I read that changed my life called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. And he describes resistance as an inner force, a negative inner force that every one of us has, and it's easiest described as like the little voice in the morning that tells you, don't get up yet, you know, just stay in bed for a little bit longer, or the voice that you hear when you want to go to the gym or to your yoga studio to practice. You know, don't go today, let's go tomorrow instead, you know, but it's always lying. Because then tomorrow comes, and then it'll say again, well, let's go tomorrow again. So it's like resistance is an inner barrier, like a force field that you come up against that wants to stop you from doing what is important to you. And the more important something is to you, the more resistance you're going to feel. So for me, music is very important. This is why I experience a lot of resistance, you know. And then like... the worst outcome is if when you give in to resistance and it kicks your ass, you basically don't do your work, you know. So resistance never stops. It always exists inside of you, and the battle has to be fought every day again to beat it. And you know, you can find out more by buying that book by Stephen Pressfield, The War of Art. I don't get any percentages, by the way. It's just a good book.
I will link it.
And like, I mean, like, I think you've had some similar experiences as well, where you come up against inner obstacles, and all of a sudden things get very hard, you know. The best way is to kind of push through these things and to keep working, you know. But a lot of people give up when they come up against inner barriers. Yeah. I would actually say the obstacles that you face that are inside of you are there's a lot bigger and a lot more difficult to overcome than the obstacles you're going to face in the world. Yeah.
So it's also really good exercise in a way to realize this, because then...
Yeah. I mean, look, you know, you can say like the world is against me, you know, and this is difficult because nobody wants to sign my label, but the real battle is an inner battle, you know, not really... you know, it sounds all very esoteric, but it really is true, you know. And the further you progress towards your goal, the more you have to deal with this, and because resistance is always strongest close to the finishing line.
So,
you know,
close to the release date.
Or or the album or whatever, you know, like that's when it's going to throw up everything against you, you know. And it can take many different forms, you know. It can take the form of friends that you know, don't understand that you have to work and that want to take you out and party. Can be you know, addictions that you have to surfing the internet, to partying, to alcohol, whatever, you know. It can many different forms, but it has all one thing in common, which is stopping you from doing your work. Yeah.
So yeah, super important to take your time to reflect stuff and say, okay, this maybe could be like a way like the resistance is showing up for me. Yeah, you have to learn to recognize it. That's the main challenge, you know, because it can come in many different forms. And you know, for me, it used to come like, for example, like I'm a migraine sufferer, so I get headaches, you know. And sometimes, you know, I would get a headache in the morning, and I was like, oh my god, I'm going to have a terrible day. I'm going to be lying in my bed all day in a darkened room, and I'm just going to have this terrible headache which is going to play out for like 4 or 5 hours. And usually when I would start it feeling coming on, I would cancel everything and go like, alright, I'm going to have to be at home and take my migraine medication and wait till this thing is over, you know. And now I'm like, well, I'm going to go to the studio, and if I still have a headache by 12 p.m, then I'll go home, you know. And you know what? 9 out of 10 times it's gone by 12. But normally I would have stayed at home, you know. So I mean, you can read into it whatever you want, but there's a lot of psychological things going on there where, like, you know, the migraine became like an excuse for me, you know, to not do certain things, you know. Yeah, so resistance can take many different forms, and you have to recognize what it is for you. Okay.
Yeah.
Super. Yeah, profound, and I think super. Like the change that you make when you overcome this stuff is really, really big.
Really big. And that's when things start taking off, you know. And this is when you recognize, you know, certain people who are very successful. I have, like, the more successful I get, the more respect I have for people who've created a life like that for themselves, because you can see they you know, like, I mean, some people are not really conscious of this, they just do it automatically. Some people are conscious of it, but like most of people who are really like doers and who run businesses and who run their careers well, like a business, you know, they know about this, and they've pushed through the tough times, you know, and came out at the other side. Yeah.
And speaking of success, what is your attitude towards success or failure?
It's quite a general question. I would say that, like, I want success, and I want to go as far as I can, basically. Success is for me reaching as many people as possible with my music and taking it as far as I can. And for me, that is defined as whether I live a self-determined life. So am I doing every day what I want to do, you know, which is producing music, touring, you know, all of these things, you know. So that's what I want to do. That's what I love doing. And as long as I can keep doing that, I'm succeeding.
And did it ever happen to you that, like, a former failure set you up for later success? So that turned out in a really different way?
Yes, I mean, basically things take time, and like I have had many setbacks, and things not working out, things that were promised are not happening, shows that you're supposed to play, have been cancelled, or they found somebody else to put on a lineup. Managers that were supposed to sign me changed their minds. Agencies that were supposed to sign me found somebody different. But every single time that has happened, about 3 to 6 months later, somebody else came along, and they were usually better than what I'd had been offered before, and what at a time I thought was like a really devastating setback, and really knocked my confidence. But then you just keep working, and something better will happen.
Yeah. So
that's my experience, at least. I'm sure it's not like this for everybody, but for me, like, it just, I always say trust in the process. Trust in the process, and trusting in the process means sitting down to work every day, making music, and release it, basically.
And bring it out.
Yeah. Shipping it is just as important as making it. You can really deceive yourself of going to the studio every day and thinking, well, I'm working on music every day. It's like, well, how much have you released? So
that's the other side.
That's the bar where you have to measure yourself. It's how much music is actually coming out and reaching people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And when we speak about reaching people, do you sometimes hear like advice from other people where you think, hey, this is something that actually should be ignored by people who really want to make a difference and release music and reach people?
Well, I wouldn't be able to name anything specific right now, but what I can say is that things are moving incredibly fast in the music industry, and things that were the norm or normal like a year ago or 2 years ago are not anymore today. And you constantly have to adapt and change with the times, like social media, for example, is a really good example. Like Facebook has almost become irrelevant now, and Instagram is the most important platform, and that happened within the space of about a year and a half. And when it comes to other things, I would also say that let me think of something else, another example. For me, it's basically you can really tell some of the guys that have been in the business for a long time, they really don't understand the modern world anymore, and they still think you can post flyers and event links, on Facebook or Instagram and think you're going to get some sort of engagement, and it's like, no, it's things have changed.
Mm-hmm.
And some people don't like the changes because it's a lot more personality focused now. It's really about you and how you present yourself and market yourself, rather than just doing what you used to be able to do in the past. But it's adapt or perish, So you have to change with the times.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And do you have like a favorite way of getting to know this new things, or like how do you keep up with that, or how do you
I always try to
about this?
So I try to do a thing which basically is it's got forms and certain forms of psychology and whatever. It's modeling excellence, basically. So like you always kind of model the people who are the best at that current state. So it's not hard to find out who's smashing it on social media, and then you do what they do, and I think you can learn from everybody. People sometimes get really caught up in details that are not really very important. Like for example, whether they like the genre of music an artist is playing, and then they dismiss everything that artist does, But like you could learn something from David Guetta, You can learn something from Armin van Buuren, It might not be your kind of music, but these are very successful guys, And they've done something right in their careers to be where they are. Now, sort of music and creativity aside, you can look for inspiration everywhere, of how people who are very successful got into the place where they are.
Yeah, so it's kind of transcessing the like boundaries of your own genre in a way, and
yes,
like looking
yes,
what
yeah,
are guys doing in classical,
transcending the boundaries.
yeah. What are guys doing in the classical music world?
What are they doing in hip hop? You know, for me, hip hop is a really big inspiration. You know, like hip hop has always been very business minded. People like to make money. You know, and almost in the house and techno scene, money is looked upon as something dirty, or like, you know, this is like, well, this artist is about money, and it's like, well, you know, I want to make money because I want to keep making art, you know, and that's the bottom line, you know. Do I want to go back to the day job? No, I don't. So I want to make money, you know,
to support yourself,
to support myself as an artist and to live a self-determined life. So I really look to hip hop for inspiration, and you get a number of artists that like are really cool, that have really had like a real DIY ethos. We were literally just watching a Tyler the Creator video, me and you together, like 15 minutes ago, and you know, he's a really amazing example because, you know, he's used to self-release. He's now signed to a major label, but he used to self-release. He produces all of his own music. He's got his own clothing line where he's the designer. He designs all of the artwork for the albums. He's just a DIY guy, you know. So hip hop is like a real inspiration for me, and how people there, you know, live a creative life, you know, and reach a wide audience with what they do, you know. Because like at some point hip hop was considered to be an underground type of music, you know, and you know, in many respects still is, but you know, it's reaching an audience of millions of people, as is electronic music now, you know. So I think the times where you had the clear distinctions between underground and overground and commercial are like gone now, you know. So it's really it's all coming together.
And still you say it's like focus first on the quality of your music, and then you think about everything else.
The foundation of everything has to be the music. I mean, there's people who build careers different ways. People that build a career only by association. Meaning, you know, they associate with artists bigger than them, and that's how they get on lineups. Those people get their 3 or 5 years in the spotlight, but they usually go very quickly because the house doesn't have a foundation, you know. And the house, which is your career, you know, has to have a solid foundation. And if it's a music career, how can it have a solid foundation if in a music career the foundation is not music, you know? Like if it's networking, you know, then like you're in the wrong business, you know. So networking has to be a part of it. You know, social media has to be a part of it. You know, even running a label can be a part of it. Foundation is the creation of music. You know, that's the bedrock of everything.
And I think what with speaking about resistance, we already spoke about a really important part of getting to this creative state, and be creative and work on your craft, and like put the hours in the studio as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have like something else in mind that really is important for creativity, the way how you see it?
I think it's important to have regular stimulation. That can be anything. Can be a walk in the park, can be a visit to the museum, can be a good TV show that you're watching on Netflix. You know, inspiration can come from anywhere, but like basically creativity doesn't really mean creating something new. Nobody ever creates anything new. All you do is you copy, transform and combine things. So, you know, you take something from here and from there and from there and from there, and you combine them, and then that becomes something new. But it's always components that already existed, and that process is infinite. It will go on forever, and there's infinite permutations of that, you know. But it works in a very simple way. So, you know, whatever your input is going to be your output. So if your input is crap, you know, if you you know, spend your time watching you know, sitcom or whatever, you know, or some reality TV or whatever, you know, like anything, you know, anything that's anything that I would consider to be like low vibrational, you know, and that's different things for different people, you know, but you know, just watching the X Factor on TV, you know, like singing shows, whatever, you know, like, you know, then, you know, your creativity is going to suffer. So you need good input. So good input means maybe seeing like a live artist, go to a concert, go to a beautiful place and spend some time there, all sorts of stimulation. Go to an art gallery, all sorts of things that you can do. Yeah. But you need high quality stimulation for your creativity to take these things in and put them in a different context and put them out again.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. And from my own experience, I would say it's super important to be in the studio and to put in the hours in the studio, but also give yourself time to
live a life.
And also to see new things and
go absolutely.
Do you know this book, The Artist's Way?
Yes, I know this book. This is where I got the idea from.
Yeah,
going on artist stage, once a week. I've been on many artist dates. I used to read this book. I read this book probably about 10 years ago. There's some things that I still do till now. For example, one of the really important things that she recommended to me, the author of the book, was journaling. So writing the morning pages. I'm still writing. Not every morning. Like sometimes I have a few days off. Sometimes even a couple of weeks off. But I always go back to journaling, and I now have a pretty complete record of the last 10 years in notebooks at home, which is also amazing because when you're old, you can just go back to a date and know what you thought and what you're doing at a particular day. Which is incredible.
You find some inspiration. As well. Maybe. I wanted to do this by not going back to that.
And also marvel at how far you've come, because the concerns that you had 10 years ago are not the concerns that you have now, hopefully.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I really like this. Do you have another favorite kind of routine that really helps you to keep on doing your thing and keep on going the way you want to go?
It's really about if it comes to a routine, it's coming to the studio on a daily basis. So when I'm not touring, I'm here every day. I rarely take a day off. I do go on holiday once a year, or maybe twice a year for probably a total of 3 weeks over the whole year. But it's pretty much just studio and touring. So my routine is just being here, and I love being here. Sometimes it gets to 10 o'clock at night. I'm should go home and eat something, but I just love being here, and I know this won't last forever. I know that hopefully at some point my touring is going to get so much that I'm going to struggle to find as much studio time as I'm doing now, so I'm trying to make the most of it right now.
And really enjoy it now.
Yeah. Because when things flow, studio can be really tough when things don't flow and you're beating your head against the wall, but when things are good, you're like the king of the world, so yeah.
Definitely. And for me, dealing with resistance on this way, for me it was also really important to realize that it's about showing up.
Yeah, it's about showing up.
And that's when you showed up in the studio, that's already success.
Absolutely. And
it's independent of how it goes.
100%. And I always hear a lot of people saying well, you can't force it, you shouldn't go to the studio if you're not feeling creative. And it's no man, you just show up every day and you give it a good go, because creativity comes when you sit down and create, it's not creating that's hard, it's starting that's hard. And that's also from the War of Art, actually.
Yeah.
That's a secret that that a real artist knows that other people don't know. Is it's not the creating part that's hard, it's sitting down and starting that's hard. Once you've done that, things usually flow. And if you look at the most prolific artists out there, for them, if they didn't go to the studio when they felt like it, it was just a habit. They just love being creative, and they create every day. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Cool. I think that's a really nice place to end our conversation. So,
good.
A good base.
Done.
And also, one of my favorite parts from the last minutes was when you talked about how you deal with the headache. And said, okay, I'm just going to the studio and when I'm still feeling like this after 12, I'm going home again.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, really a powerful way. To really show up and sit down and start creating, and then deciding how it goes. If you,
and don't get me wrong, you know, I have a lot of days where, you know, resistance beats me, you know. Days that I spend, you know, surfing the internet or answering emails, you know, because you feel, oh, I've got so many emails to answer, you know, and then before you know it, it's like 6 p.m. and you think like, oh my god, it's evening now, and now I better go home, you know. So like these days happen, they happen to everybody. What's really important is just that like you treat every day like a fresh start, and you know, don't go into a habit of going like, well, you know, I fucked around today, so I'm not gonna, you know, do anything for the whole week. It's just like, no, like, get back tomorrow, try again. You know, it's a battle that has to be fought every single day. So, yeah, awesome. And it doesn't get easier. So, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time.
Done.